Keith Carter joins us in the Pearl River Resort Studios. Good to see you.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Good summer so far?
Yeah, it's been a good summer. As we were just talking off air, it's been a fast summer, a busy summer. There used to be a little time off in athletics in July, and apparently that doesn't happen anymore. So it's all good. Obviously, August 1st tomorrow, and we all know what that means, that football season is right around the corner. So really excited about it, but it's been a good but fast summer.
You know, we hear coaches complain about wanting a little more time off, and it's hard to feel sorry for them with the salaries that they're making. I mean, ADs are the same way, right?
Well, we're very blessed. Don't get me wrong. We're very blessed and not complaining, but it is, the world's different now. We're just solving different problems, and, it's just part of it. And I think now with everything going on with the House settlement and, just different things that we're trying to figure out, that there's really no off time. And, it's even different, Richard, than several years ago. I mean, the football team's basically here all summer. They're working out. I mean, other teams are in Oxford all summer too, doing voluntary workouts and different things, and in summer school. So, there's always something to do. But it was nice. We did get to spend a week down at the beach last week, which was pretty cool.
Good for you. You earned a week at the beach. Let's start by something that was announced just a couple of weeks ago. People have seen the big stadium concerts. Morgan Wallen the first go around, and then Morgan Wallen round two. And those have been very successful. You've got a pavilion concert coming up the Friday night before the season begins. A couple of guys with ties to Ole Miss that are going to be performing, presented by SuperTalk Mississippi. Where did this come from? Did it come together quickly? Is it something you've been working on for a long time? I know you have said that in addition to some of the Vaught-Hemingway Stadium concerts, you wanted to try and use the pavilion more.
Well, we do, and the pavilion was built, and we got in that in 2016. It was built for concerts. I mean, obviously for basketball first and foremost, but the way they built it and the structure and the way they rigged it and everything was for concerts. And we had Brad Paisley in there early on, and we just haven't had a lot of success since then at finding the right acts and getting going. But really excited to have Brad and Josh and Mustache Band, that will be there. And ticket sales have been going well. I think we've sold almost 2,500 tickets already. Which is really exciting, and hopefully, when the students get back, they're going to really be excited about that concert. But we really do want to get in the business of more concerts in the pavilion, and we think that it's easy. Obviously, Tupelo and South Haven get a lot of great shows. We feel like our venue is a fantastic venue, and we know Brett and the rest of the guys will have a great show, and hopefully, it can build some momentum for the future as well.
Brett Young, who played baseball at Ole Miss and has gone on to have a great career. Josh Kelly, who has been really, really successful, and then more of a local hit with the Mustache Band.
Yeah, I think it's a great lineup. I really do. And basically it all kind of started with a text to Brett Young. He said, we noticed he had an open night on the night before our first football game. So he and I were texting back and forth. He's like, hey, let's make it happen. And, we got all the right people talking. We added Josh as an opener, and then obviously the Mustache Band, which, everybody loves them. So I think it'll be a great show. And obviously leading into that next day with our opener should be a lot of fun.
You do these, I'm trying to decide how to ask this. The concert business is driven by promoters, and they're huge, huge ones like Live Nation and maybe Ticketmaster's involved with some. I guess Live Nation is the biggest. And so promoters are involved to bring really big acts in. Have you had to become kind of a promoter in terms of bringing an act in, or how does that work?
Well, it works a lot of different ways. And like you said, with Morgan Wallen, Live Nation was right in the middle of all that, and we relied on them for a lot of the heavy lifting and the expertise. Obviously, we had never done a stadium show before. Neil Mead on our staff has been phenomenal working with that, and tons of people on our staff too. Too many to name. But this one just kind of happened organically, and through relationships, we were able to get this one done and get it done pretty quickly. But certainly as we move forward, where we'll want to bring in big acts and different things that require that promoter and those type of things too. So we're a little bit new to this. We're still learning as we go, but obviously in a world, and we'll probably talk about it later, of needing to find new ways to generate revenue, concerts can be a big part of that.
And we've seen, you may have kind of been at the front end of this with the Morgan Wallen deal 2 years ago, but we've seen some other schools that have done this as well. I'm assuming that was kind of what Texas A&M did when they had George Strait and had like 112,000 people for it. I mean, that's what you'd love to have, or you do 2 nights like you did with Morgan Wallen. What does that look like going forward? I mean, there have been rumors, there have been names that people want to. Where are we on the next stadium concert?
Well, first of all, everybody wants to mimic Ole Miss. That everybody wants to do what Ole Miss does. So
and we got Haydad's mic up.
We see that.
Oh my God!
We see that across the landscape. So that was for you, Haydad.
Love you, Chief.
No, yeah, absolutely. No, it is something that we're going to look to do a stadium show every year, and we're looking for next April. We have some things in the works there, and there have been some names that have kind of been floated out, and we would love to do some of those big headliners, just like Morgan Wallen, and there's not many that can sell out a stadium, so you can kind of just by default kind of pick out who we're talking to, but I want to make sure that we country's been the genre we kind of had so far, but we want to go to all genres of music and make sure that we're bringing lots of different acts that are fun to the stadium and to the pavilion.
Haydad has said, he is very much on the record, that if Metallica comes to Vaught Hemingway Stadium, he will be buying a ticket, even though that money could end up in the Grove Collective.
Hey, I'm not anything's possible.
Or the foundation or wherever it goes.
I'm a big 80s, 90s, hair band guy myself. So, we'll see. Metallica, Bon Jovi, who knows? We'll see what happens.
Bon Jovi. Hey, Dad, would you come for Bon Jovi?
I wouldn't come for Bon Jovi,
no. Metallica, no doubt, though.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Just making sure that we...
Can I sit in the box with you, Keith, if that happens?
I'll have my people call your people.
Appreciate that. You're talking to my people right now.
Just
wait
that out.
How many acts are there that legitimately could sell out a stadium or sell out a stadium for 2 nights?
Yeah, I think it's probably in the 15 and under range, in the whole world right now. We've kind of explored a lot of those. Obviously, you've got your huge ones, Taylor Swift and George and Garth Brooks and some of those, Coldplay, U2, you've got some of those that have been doing it for years and can continue to do it. And again, we want to think big. We want to think about getting some of those big acts in. And I think the one thing that we have done with the 2 stadium shows we've had is built some equity. I think Live Nation, I think others that have come in, they feel like we've been really easy to work with. We've given them what they needed. Our stadium isn't the most conducive to one of those big shows because you can't bring a big truck onto the field. You have to do a little extra work with setup and takedown. But I think our people have really made up a big difference in that. So we're looking for a lot of big shows, and hopefully, before too long, we can announce, what we're going to do next spring.
Andrew in Oxford says, Garth in Oxford. You heard it here first.
That's how it always works, right? I'm going to get quoted on. I mentioned Garth Brooks, so therefore he must be coming, right? So, but no, we're hoping to get some big ones, and again, another one next April.
Visiting with Keith Carter, athletics director at Ole Miss. Ticket sales. You announced, I guess, a month or so ago that season tickets were sold out this year. Obviously, there's a student allotment that goes into that as well. Where does all of that stand right now? Will there be any individual game tickets available?
As of now, no. We've got about 250 student tickets left that will go to the public on, I believe, August 23rd. We tried to kind of stage those out over the summer as orientations happen, and so that way all the tickets wouldn't be sold at the beginning of the summer and leave students out in the cold. But we're selling 13,000 student tickets. It's the most we've ever sold.
Really?
So we'll be sold out there once the 250 are gone. Obviously, a full sellout in the stadium. So, we may get creative on some of the non-conference games to be able to sell a few more season student tickets at the gate. If we know maybe all 13,000 of those might not be showing up, but obviously for your conference games, it's going to be a hard sellout, and we expect most people to be using those tickets.
Did the student section expand? Have you had to add another section to get to that number of student tickets?
Well, Richard, hopefully the fire marshal is not listening. You kind of led me into this question. But no, it's the most we've ever sold. And one of the things that we're going to do this year, the student section has always been an open section. So obviously a student ticket gets you in there. But if you came in the stadium at any other, entry point, you could walk over into the student section. A lot of high school kids go in there and different things. This year we will make it exclusively for Ole Miss students. So nobody else will be able to go in there. It will be kind of gated off from, it won't be a 360 concourse as it's always been. But it's in a what we're trying to do is fit more of our students in there, which I think will be good. So 13,000, that's about the most we can sell. The chancellor and I have talked a lot about it. Obviously enrollment is up, freshman class is up. So this is something we're going to have to continue to monitor as we move forward and kind of what that looks like.
How does that number compare to other SEC? Obviously a place like Texas A&M that's got 55, 60,000 students, or Florida that's got 50,000 students, that number is probably going to be bigger there. How does 13,000 compare kind of across the league?
Well, I want to say like Texas A&M sells like 30,000 student tickets, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
So I don't know exactly what percentage, per stadium, but I would say, you look at ours, it's about, close to 20% of the stadium, something like that, 18-20% of the stadium. So it's a big number. And obviously we want our students to have a great experience. We know that, one of the reasons they're coming to Ole Miss right now is for great SEC football. And, so we want to make sure they have an opportunity to get in the game. But at the same time, you got to make sure that you're selling seats for the bigger revenue chunks as well to your donors and fans. So finding that right balance as we move forward is going to be
Said, I'll be in the Grove for the 7 p.m. tent run. Are there any alternate plans for Grove setup so that people can do both?
I don't think there will be. I think, that's just the problem we run into on Friday nights in Oxford of football weekends is there's about 100 events that are all, everybody decides they want to do them at the same time. And, it's hard to mess with the Grove setup and just kind of what that has become and the timing on all that. So I would encourage folks to get out there as quick as they can, set their stuff up, and then come on in and check out as much as they can. The highest price ticket is $50. So it's a very affordable concert. I think there's tickets all the way down to $35 right now. So, if you can't make it for the opener, you at least get a couple acts there at the end. But I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Is doing a concert in the Pavilion significant enough in terms of revenue in comparison to, obviously the football stadium is a really big number. It's a much smaller venue. Do you do 3 or 4 of those across the year and you go, okay, cumulatively, this is worth the effort?
Yeah, that's exactly how we think about it. You put this one in, and I don't know that we'll make a ton of money on this one in the big scheme of things, but obviously we get one under our belt, and Brett's a guy that loves Ole Miss, and we love him. It's a great great combination. But I think if you can do maybe 3 or 4 a year, you're probably up in the $1 million a year by the time you do 4 of those, and maybe a little less. But it can be significant, especially if you work your numbers right and sell the tickets like you need to. So between the stadium and maybe 3 or 4 pavilion shows each year, we feel like there's significant revenue there.
So are you saying $1 million including the stadium, or just for the pavilion concerts, and then you can do another 7-ish figures with a football stadium concert?
That's right. Yeah, I think the pavilion itself, if you did it right with 4 concerts, you could potentially net $1 million just with the pavilion.
Okay. That's interesting stuff. I asked Borky and Haydad a question at the end of the 3 o'clock hour, and I think you may have heard it as you were driving in. Define success however you want to, but say that this season for Ole Miss, where there's so much anticipation, goes well. Whether that means playoff or you win a couple of games in the playoff, or Haydad laughed earlier when I said, hey, you win a national championship. However you want to measure.
I didn't laugh. I winced.
You scoffed?
Yeah, I winced.
That's fair.
Hey, Dad, if we win a national championship, you can definitely sit in my box for the next for the next concert. You're in.
You know what? I'll take that deal. I'll take that deal for sure.
Count it.
Right.
Okay. He also, when we go to Pearl River Resort next, has said that he's going to place a small wager on.
I'm taking out some emotional insurance,
wow.
Keith. I'm gonna tell, just in case.
There you go.
Just in case.
Hedge your bet a little bit. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Good planning. We also know that there's going to be a ton of turnover on the roster. Obviously, Jackson Dart would move on, and lots of other players as well. And so, is it sustainable? Can you take a really, really successful year with massive roster turnover and then run it back the next year?
I think that's I was listening as I was driving in. I think it's an interesting question. I think Lane has obviously proved that he can go into the portal and last year was built with a lot of portal players, and it led into this year where all this, the expectations there. So, I think you've got to be realistic though with the portal. At some point, do you get all the right guys? Do the guys have the chemistry they need, or do you get a couple bad apples in that group or whatever? So I think it's sustainable. I think that the fact that, rev share is about to come into the mix, where we know for a fact that there's going to be $20 to $22 million every year that's being spent to share revenue with the student athletes. A big chunk of that we think will go to football. So I think the money's going to be there. I know y'all were talking earlier, obviously if you win this year and have a great season, there's going to be a lot of, the fans are going to be excited and they're going to continue to give. But even if they don't, we still have to come up with the $22 million. So, there's going to be, funding there to go out and bring in new players. But to me, it all comes down to, can you find that right locker room chemistry? Can you find, and obviously, can you have enough holdovers from that winning season to continue to have that chemistry and that culture in your locker room for the new guys that are coming? I think that's the biggest part of this year's team, was that tons of new faces, but tons of old faces, guys that were leaders on the offense, leaders on the defense, and they've been able to, kind of show what the culture is, and that's why I think, we have an opportunity for a lot of success this year.
Your budget has grown almost exponentially over the last decade. I mean, I think back to, I don't know, when I was in school 20-ish years ago, and almost had like a 25 or 30 or $35 million athletics budget. And now it's like 130 or 135. I may be off on those numbers. Maybe it's a little bigger than that. But still, when you take 15% of your budget, 10% of your budget, and say it has to go to this, you were spending that money before you had to take that $22 million that you just mentioned out of the budget. Where does that money come from? Do you have to make cuts? And I don't necessarily mean cut sports, but how do you account for that?
Well, I think it's a giant math problem that we all have to solve. I think it is creating new revenues, and we talked about those things like with concerts, and obviously got a new opportunity a couple weeks ago with field logos and, those type of things. And so I think there's going to be some revenue opportunities. I think there's some more revenue opportunity with the ESPN contract potential if we go from an 8th to 9th game. There's some revenues that we can continue to grow. But yeah, cost cutting will be a part of it. We're going to have to tighten the belt. And we had a meeting with our head coaches about a month ago and kind of walked through what we knew about House and the rev share and the settlement, and talked to all of them about, hey, we're probably going to come back to you and ask you to look at your budgets. Can we find 3%? Can we find 5%, 7%, whatever that looks like? And I told them, I said, from a cost cutting standpoint, anything from A to Z is on the table. Z is certainly cutting sports. I mean, that's the very last option. We would never want to do that unless it was an absolute last resort, because we don't want to take opportunities away from young people, from student athletes. And I was worried from day one of this is that by giving more resources to some, does it take opportunities away from others? And that's going to be one of our main goals, is to not do that. I think the other thing is that, we've all been involved with fundraising, and our collectives have done a great job. Hopefully a lot of those dollars start flowing back into the athletics department through the Athletics Foundation. I think there's a big chunk there that will be kind of incremental revenue, if you will, just moving from the collectives back into the foundation. So all those things are on the table, and trying to get creative with what that looks like.
But is there going to still be a need for the collective? I mean, are people still going to need to give to the Grove Collective to help with the NIL piece of this, in addition to the revenue sharing that's going to happen?
Well, I don't think the collectives are going away, and we certainly have been very appreciative of the job that Walker and his team have done. They're going to be a big part of our rev share moving forward, and a big part of how we think about it as we move forward. I think it'll look different. I'm not sure, that in theory, through collectives and third parties, those are going to have to be, legitimate NIL deals, with a quid pro quo, and there's a service provided and all those things. So I think those entities, the collectives, the third parties, can still help with some of those deals. And, their membership drives may still be there to help them pay for some of their operational needs and those type of things. So I think that they'll be a big part of it. I think it'll look a lot different. And I think the hope is that, we all know in our business that everybody finds loopholes and ways around things. But hopefully this rev share will at least bring back, to center a little bit about, what this NIL and rev share could look like. And maybe there won't be a lot of the shenanigans going on that we have going on now.
A couple of minutes left. I know we can't talk in detail about the House settlement in just 2 minutes, but one of the things that has really stood out in recent days is the expanded scholarship numbers for individual sports. Football going to 105, but that's a cap, right? No walk-ons. It's 105 scholarships. That's as big as your roster can be. College baseball, finally, going to 34. Basketball going from, I think, 13 to 15. Kind of across the board, there's an increase in the number of scholarships available. Does that cost you more, or does that come out of that $22 million that we've been talking about? Where does that come from?
Yeah, any new scholarship that we provide up to $2.5 million comes out of the 22%. So we know for a fact that $2.5 million, if we use that much money in new scholarships, has to come out of your cap. As we've looked at it, 105 is the roster limit for football. That doesn't mean you have to give 105 scholarships.
Okay.
So, you could say, hey, we're going to stick with 85, and then you've got, essentially every sport becomes an equivalency sport. I mean, because you could say we got 85 scholarships, we're going to spread those out over 105. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. Obviously, in football, we're probably going to end up closer to 105 before it's all said and done. But we're actually in the middle of an exercise right now with our team and our staff is what all these scholarships look like, how many we could allocate to each sport. Just because you can go to the max doesn't mean we're necessarily going to go to the max. You got Title IX implications. There's so many things that are involved with that. But certainly that's an extra expense. But if it comes out of the cap, it's going to be kind of built in to that number too. But it's all, there's so many. The House settlement is a great first step. We needed to get it to get some financial security, at least know what we're dealing with. But there's still a lot of problems to solve as we move forward.
I guess we'll talk about those problems in the future. Really appreciate your time. How can people buy tickets for the concert? Brett Young, Josh Kelly, and Mustache Man.
Yep, just go to our ticket office website. You can go in there and pick them out. Like I said, I think we sold about 2,500 right now, and hopefully we can get it up to 6,000-7,000. Have a great show that night.
Keith, thanks so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Richard.